Quickly moving on to our next session, the big picture amidst the uncertainties. This session will focus on the global economies which have recently opened the legal sector to understand the potential impact, challenges, and opportunities it has presented to them. We have a very experienced panel who would be sharing their global experiences. To begin with, first on the panel is Mr. Anand Prasad, who is a partner at Trilegal. Mr. Prasad has a good understanding of evolving government policy and advises on development in a variety of sectors. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Anubhuti Agrawal, who is a counsel at the Hilton Worldwide. She's a graduate from the National Law School, Bangalore, and a Chevening scholar. She was a partner in the general corporate team of earlier Amarchand and Mangaldas and then the Shardul Amarchand Mangaldas. Having spent over 10 years at the firm, she has now moved on to the Hilton Worldwide. Welcome, ma'am. Next on the panel, we have Mr. Chandralal, who is the founding partner of Singh & Singh, Lal and Sethi. Apart from being a successful advocate, Mr. Lal is also an innovator. He was a pioneer in creating a completely paperless law firm in India by developing an IP management software which is currently being used and marketed by the firm. Next, we have Mr. Ran Chakrabarti, who is the partner at Indus Law. He spent the first 6 years of his legal career in London and Singapore with the finance and projects practices as Ashers and White & Case, advising multinational corporations and global financial institutions. He moved to India in 2007 to work with the then AMSS, and then he moved to run his own niche practice advising foreign companies and financial institutions on their inbound India work and the Indian companies on their outbound joint ventures and acquisitions. Next, we have an expert from overseas, Mr. Norman Clark, who would be joining us virtually. If you could connect that with the screen, please. Mr. Clark is one of the founding principals of the International Legal Management Consultancy of Walker Clark LLC. He is also one of the world's leading authorities on businesses and marketing strategy for law firms in emerging markets, working with progressive law firms in Africa, Asia, the Central and Eastern Europe, Latin America, and the Middle East. Over to you, sir, now.
Managed to get the mic on. Thanks, Bitika, for organizing this discussion. Just a caveat at the outset. I'm going to be, whatever I speak over here is my own views, not representative of my firm, which regardless of what views we might have at a SILF forum, we will stand firmly behind SILF and the views that come out of the SILF. Nothing that is said over here is meant to sort of challenge anything that comes out of the SILF. But what I did find interesting, and before we open the panel for conversation, what I did find interesting was a couple of things. That we all wanted to be so politically correct, i.e., we're all happy that the market is opening up. I think that's just a politically correct statement. A lot of us actually like status quo. And one of the reasons why lots of people might be reluctant to actually come up and speak is nobody knows how to deal with a change in status quo. People don't know, they're unsure. And so therefore, why step out and take a position formally in an open forum? With that, I think sort of going off to what our panel is meant to do is actually more of a big picture. What do you expect when the market opens up? So we normally think in terms of foreign firms as foreign firms, those foreign guys. I don't want to use the racial, those white or the black or the yellow guys, as against us brown guys. But actually it's not like that. They're not one set of foreign people. Each firm is very different. The way they approach legal practice is very different. The way they are structured is very different. The way they approach their clients is very different. And therefore, how they will function in our business environment will be very different. Each one of them will be very different. There might be firms that decide to come to India. There'll be a bunch of firms that don't want to come to India. There'll just be a mix of everything. So there is no common thread that says that this is how foreign firms will react. And so partly our panel will have conversations around that. The other is, what do you expect? So we don't know what will happen to the rules. If, let's say, the rules get implemented as they are with some changes, etc., which allow foreign firms to come and operate in India, what do you expect in the next 2 years? What do you expect in the next 5 years? What is going to change in the landscape? What implications will it have for individual practitioners? What implications it might have for Indian firms? And try and demystify some of those elements. But just to start with, do we have... should I maybe start with my extreme left? Rand, you worked at an international firm. How do you see different firms behaving? You've worked overseas. You might have worked at one firm, but you've seen other firms in operation. What do you think shapes their thought process?
Thank you very much. I think to take that question, what reshapes their thought process? I think essentially running a law firm is running a business, and from I think the perspective of foreign law firms, there is no a priori ideological view to go out and run the world almost, or sort of set up the flag in India. I think it's a bit mistaken to sort of look at it from that perspective. Foreign law firms really go where their clients are and where their businesses are. If they don't have an India connection, then it would make little sense in the first place for a foreign law firm to come here. I think what we're going to see unfold over the next few years, and first, if I could just say that I'm very pleased to see that the debate seems to have moved on from the sort of entrenched positions of pro and con liberalisation to a question of modality as to how liberalisation is going to happen. I think that's one of the defining features of discussions over the last 2 years. But I think the issue really is foreign law firms will come to India to practice either English law or New York law on pretty much outbound transactions. From their perspective, I think it's really a question of accessing Indian corporates who are doing outbound work, whether that be acquisitions or whether that be the listing of future equity on international exchanges, or, for example, the issue of bonds on foreign exchanges. As you will be aware, recently Indian companies have started to issue what are called masala bonds on foreign markets. In order to facilitate this interplay between Indian corporates and the foreign markets, having foreign law firms here in India really facilitates the due diligence process of the issuer and essentially provides a seamless sort of transactional management process. So I think that's really, in essence, my view of why would a foreign law firm come to India. It would really be here first and primarily to think about what Indian business is going to be operating internationally. Secondary, of course, they will obviously have their own clients who may well be considering transactions in India. But I think being on the ground and allowing them to practice their own law would be a very welcome step forward. And I think at that point I'd probably share the views of the rest of the panel. Thank you.
Any views you might have, Anubhuti? Yeah.
Thanks, Anand. Just taking a step forward from what Rand said, they would be initially practicing foreign laws. So, as Tushar also mentioned, being a part of an MNC where we have legal departments in various different jurisdictions, it's not going to make such a big difference initially, but obviously having our global panel firms being present in India is going to, in the medium to long term, have an impact on the way we give business to law firms, individual lawyers, and the like. The other thing that I also think may happen, which potentially could drive foreign law firms to come into India, is becoming an international counsel role sitting in India. A lot of APAC countries are getting service sitting in Singapore. I don't see a reason why that can't happen from India eventually at some point. So that could be another driver, but it's going to be a business decision. No foreign firm is going to come to India if they don't see that they're going to make money. It's a lot of cost. It's a lot of effort for them to come into India. They're not going to be here just to have a foot under the door. If they do, it'll be a small one-member, two-member office. Serious players won't do that.
No, so very true it is. I mean, we think in terms of practice of law as practice of law, but lots of people think of it as a business. I mean, lots of us think of it as a business. And business means you actually make an investment only to make money. You're not an imperialistic outfit which actually wants to plant a flag somewhere. Unless it makes money for you, you don't get in there. And so, Norman, would you have any thoughts over there? I mean, you've been a consultant internationally for law firms. I think we can't get the audio. Yeah, just keep them on audio. Maybe in the meantime, Chandra, would you have a sense for what you think international firms would do?
We have to suggest them not to come in India because we are not able to talk to
He's a management consultant. He's not a law firm.
That's the reason why he needs to be here. But I'm just going to comment on Rad's first comment that running a law firm is a business, not in India. It's running a family. There's nobody running a law firm like a business. It's changing now over the last 5 to 10 years. We're all running families. And why are we running it? We're not running it as a business. We're running it so that my kid can take over, my grandchildren can take over. I'm coming from a background of intellectual property. The law on intellectual property is very, very standard. What is in India is happening, and we are all members of all conventions. So you can be rest assured that if there are foreign law firms coming into India in intellectual property, they are coming into India to service clients, not just abroad, but service clients here and doing a damn good job at it. Much better than any of us combined can do. Having said that, that's not such a rosy picture. I think we need to look at where are our strengths. Our strengths is not running law firms. Our strengths are not large businesses. We are not brought up in an environment of large businesses. You will never have a Walmart coming out of India. You need a sphere. If you go to the United States, you have space. There's a sense of space. There's a sense of availability. When you're talking of law firms, you're talking 200 partners, 300 partners. I still remember going to the receptionist and saying, I want to meet partner so-and-so, and she had to look at her computer screen. And I said, are you kidding me? I have to look at a computer screen? My receptionist knows me, my first name, she knows my dog's name, she knows my kids' names, who are the heirs apparent. Where are you coming from? So, that whole culture will be brought into India. If you think that bigger law firms today, and the corporate law firms are the ones which are good examples of that, are running professional outfits, you've got another thing coming. So, having traveled for intellectual property law, most of my clientele is abroad. One aspect is you see and view that different sphere. When you enter law firms, you enter offices, their receptions are bigger than my entire office. So you look at a different scale altogether. And till very recently, I was extremely bullish about law firms coming in, and I still am. And I think there's an immediate need for us to do that, is to invite law firms in. But I can assure you that in intellectual property, they will pretty much, unless we bring our act together, they will pretty much wipe out local competition. We'll all be working with large law firms, which is not a bad thing. Where is our strength? Why aren't we looking at our strengths? There's a lot of disruption happening in the legal profession. Our strength ought to be online. I was one of the, we started in, I'll cite an example of global law firms. We had the famous Whirlpool case. And here's giving you an example of how foreign law and foreign law firms are highly relevant for intellectual property. So we got It was a very technical issue on passing off, and so the gurus of passing off are obviously the Brits. So we decided that this was such a technical issue, what constituted passing off without actual sales in India. Let's get a British expert. So we got Michael Feisch, Queen's Counsel, to come and argue that case before Justice Lahoti in court number 24, Delhi High Court. We mentioned the matter. It came up on a Friday. The judge said, very well, Pratibha, who appeared on the other side and said, I want to take notice. The judge said, Monday morning, we'll have the hearing. Monday, 2:30, we'll have the hearing. Monday, when we walked in at 2:30 in the Delhi High Court, the whole High Court was buzzing with activity. The president of the Bar Association, the secretary, the entire Bar Association, the court 24 was chock-a-block full. What happened? We're not going to let a foreign lawyer argue the case. In walks Justice Lahoti, sits down, says, what's going on here? And there's this white man in the middle, the color does matter. Little Michael Feisch, and he's like, we can't have Mr. Feisch appear before you, my lord. This was, of course, an adjournment tactic. So Justice Lahoti said, why don't we just, now will you all leave the room? There's somebody in his robes. I'm not going to ask him for his credentials. I'm going to hear arguments. 4 o'clock, we'll have a meeting. And he argued that matter, I can tell you, to perfection. The law that laid down on passing off was